Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. I'm Martin Willis, your host, and we have an interesting guest this evening. First of all, Alejandro Rojas will be coming up, and I get to see him next week. Isn't that awesome? He'll be coming up with the UFO updates. We have Marie Cisneros, and she is in Montana, and she has a great background. We're going to be talking about all kinds of things as related to Montana, and possibly some will go to some wartime UFOs. We're going to be talking a little bit about that as well. I want to give a shout out to a past guest been on the show many times, because if you've been watching TV, you may have seen him on the news. He's been all over the place, and he's going to be on 31 stations next week, and that's Ray Stanford. Now, we all know Ray Stanford mostly for the Socorro case, but he's a guy that not only looks up at the sky, but he also looks down. He discovered an amazing slab of dinosaur footprints right in the NASA Goddard Space Center parking lot, right by it. He had it dug out. It is the most substantial find in the state, at least. There's mammals mixed in with dinosaurs, 100 million year old tracks. So he's going to be all over the news. He's already been in National Geographic. I just wanted to do a shout out because, again, Ray has been on many times, and he's a great guy. All right. So, again, our guest is Marie, coming right up. And so is Alejandro. I want to thank everyone that supports the show. Next week, we're going to be 2 hours earlier, and we're going to be at the International UFO Congress, and I cannot wait for the sunny, warm weather. Alejandro, how are you?
I am good. I am
tired.
Just head spinning, getting everything done, but lots of exciting stuff. Sorry if I keep... This is some of the cool stuff. So here's some of the T-shirts. Look at this one.
Oh, whoa. For YouTube people, you can see this.
Yeah, for the YouTube people, look at
Sorry
this one.
about the listener. Oh, my goodness.
Wow, alien.
Wow.
And then this is another one. This is probably my favorite.
Oh, yeah. Nice stuff. Move it around just a little bit. Move it over there. Yeah, there you go. Perfect. Right there.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that one with the Phoenix Rising.
We'll have... If there's any T-shirts left, we'll have them up at the store. Actually, many of these designs we're going to put up on the store, so people will be able to check out the store in just a couple of weeks, and you'll be able to, probably even sooner, and you'll be able to see all these designs we were just looking at and purchase them for yourself. So we'll have some that aren't labeled 2018. But, of course, if you're cool and you're at the 2018 UFO Congress, then you'll be able to purchase a T-shirt there and commemorate that you were there, and everybody's going to be so jealous. Martin, you'll get one.
Oh, I hope so. I'd like to complain just a little bit first, and not about anything except I'm complaining about winter. Do you remember last year I tried to get out to the UFO Congress and I got snowed in, and I showed you like 6-foot snow banks in front of my house? Well, we got hit again. I was
happy I lived in Arizona.
We got hit again today. Now, the problem was we had snow recently. It all melted, then it froze to a skating rink. I got my tractor, snowplow stuck. Donnie, who's sometimes on the show here, the police officer, came up with his four-wheel drive. He was getting stuck. We finally got that pushed off the side. A plow truck came in and got stuck, and I'm stuck here. But I will get out because I have till Saturday to get out. So I will get out and make sure I make the flight.
Better start, as soon as this show's over, put on your snowshoes, your galoshes, whatever you do out there, and you better start the journey.
Yeah, I think it's shoveling. If I start shoveling tonight, I should be done before Saturday when I'm leaving. But Perfect. I can't wait for that warm sunshine. I'm really looking forward to it. It'll be really
it's really been fun. Really warm out here. I mean,
I've heard that. Yeah.
I was considering turning on my AC yesterday. It was so warm. I mean,
pretty sweet. And I heard your last guest. He's great, Bryce.
Bryce is awesome. He'll be speaking at the conference. Hollywood superstar. So many cool things going on. He just sent me something today, or maybe it was on Facebook too, where he got a letter back from Tom Hanks, something they were conversing on. Really cool.
Wow. Yeah. What's his last name again?
Zabel.
Yeah, Bryce Zabel. Excellent show. I recommend anyone to check out that show on Alejandro's OpenMinds.tv. Great show. Great guy. I can't wait to meet him and try to talk him in on coming on to my show.
Mm-hmm.
So, what's going on for? Is it all UFO Congress? What we're going to be talking about? I mean, is anything happening out there?
Not completely. I mean, I think there's a couple other things, but I do want to mention one more thing for the Congress because this
Yeah.
is really exciting too. Is that I did just get the Elizondo interview final cut, and hopefully tonight I'll be putting up a little preview. But I'm very excited. I haven't been able to watch the whole thing, but some of the questions he answered were a few that I know that I had put forward and some others, and they're tough. Like, one of them was, hey, the Washington Post said you were tricking them. You tricked the DOD to get those videos out. How did they really get out? And he answered that question. A lot of other, what was it like working with Bigelow? A lot of other really interesting questions I think people are going to be fascinated by. So I'm so excited that he answered a lot of these great questions. And I know he wishes he could have answered more, but the time constraints and everything, and he will over time. So he says, we'll do a follow-up interview in a month or so.
Well, I would have loved to have asked him questions, but I bet some of the questions you've asked him are similar to what I would have asked. I wouldn't doubt it.
Yeah, and others. A lot of other people asked some great questions that they answered as well. And yeah.
Yeah, that's exciting. Well, it's coming right up, and that's going to be, that video itself is going to be showing on Saturday. And by the way, if anyone that's listening to the show is going to be there, please look me up. I'd love to hang out and meet listeners to the show. It's always a lot of fun.
Yep. One other piece of news, I guess, before I go, that is pretty cool, and it is Elizondo related, is that because this is the important news in UFOs right now,
Yeah.
He was on Las Vegas Now TV, 8 News Now, KLAS with George Knapp.
Right.
And he did a couple interviews with the I-Team there that people can check out. They're short. He only answers a question or two, but they're questions that haven't been asked before, that are important questions. So, and of course, you can expect that of George Knapp, who's just amazing and one of my favorites. And so those are really good videos that people can check out as well.
Now, the one of the questions I would have asked, and just answer this if you know, did anyone ask him about historic UFO encounters with military craft?
It's a good question, and I know the answer because he didn't. He hasn't. They didn't really look into historical cases. There was the 2004 Nimitz actually was early on, but it was somewhat historical. But that's not that long ago. But no, they were busy looking into cases that were coming in that were fresh and new, and that's what they spent their time on.
Wow. Yeah. And the one reason I asked that, of course, is because of the comment you've heard many times where people say, well, it might be military craft, that secret military craft, and they never go back into time and say, these things have been happening for, many, many dozens of years.
It is a great point. And, these people feel, because that's always a possibility. And even, like with MUFON, when I was an investigator working with them, you can't, sometimes people are like, that had to be alien, but we don't know. We don't know what technology we have out there. But I think what's interesting about what Elizondo and the ATIP group did is they knew a bit more about the technologies out there. Similar to what Nick Pope says, is that they ruled out human technology, not that they were necessarily privy to everything that's out there, but they felt that they had done their due diligence to find out if there was anything. And they don't believe they were lied to when they were told these aren't ours by other departments. But you never know for sure. But certainly in a couple of these cases, Elizondo is very confident that they were not black projects.
Now, I had a listener question me about the Nimitz, for instance, and I communicated with Robert Powell about this, and that is, will there be backup data he doesn't know himself, radar data, will that ever be released? I don't know if that's ever addressed, but that would be really interesting to actually have radar data corroborate with the video itself.
Yeah, I mean, all we have is their word that there was radar data that corroborated the case. Certainly, Robert's working hard to get as much information as he can. He still ran into a brick wall with the FOIA request where, he did request prior to Elizondo coming out for information about Nimitz, and they said, we don't have anything. Then Elizondo came out and said, yeah, we did look at Nimitz, which indicates they did indeed have something. So they indicated that they would be opening that up and giving him something. But now they've told him once again, no, we don't have anything. So he's kind of ran into a brick wall on that again. But those are some of along the lines of some of the questions that were asked. So that's what's difficult about this. Luckily, we have some insight into at least his word into the sort of investigations and the evidence that they had. But unfortunately, that's all we've got. We don't have any official documents as of yet.
Now, I wonder if anything will change with FOIA as far as releasing documents now, since this, everything's been uncovered. Maybe they'll loosen up a little bit and some more things.
Doesn't seem like it. I think that's what we were all hoping.
Yeah.
But Robert getting shut down like this kind of just shows that, nope, it seems like it's business as usual.
Well, that's too bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, is that it for the show, for news?
Sure. Yeah, I think that's it. I took up enough time, and, you've got an exciting interview with Marie.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, Alejandro, well, I'll see you in just a couple of days.
All right. See you soon, buddy.
All right. Take care.
See you.
All right, everyone. So our guest is Marie Cisneros, and she has a bachelor's degree in medical sciences, and she was also a medical doctor transcriber, and she has always been interested in interesting things, and we're going to talk about it, in ancient artifacts, and I'm all about that. I love all that stuff. And astroarchaeology, which I'd never really heard it put that way. But anyway, welcome to the show, Marie.
Thank you for having me on your show.
Yes.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you digitally.
Yeah.
So you're in Michigan, but is that right? Did you say you're in Michigan?
Yes. Yes, I am.
But you have focused a lot on Montana UFOs?
Yeah.
So how did that happen? Can you just give us your background, if you would?
Well, through the K group of MUFON, which is the case assistant group, I became the acting state director out there in Montana. So I've been doing the cases out there and trying to build up the chapter. So that's how I got involved with doing the cases out there.
Did you actually live there for?
No, I've never been to Montana. I've never been to the Big Sky Country.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I'm sure you've heard of Joan Bird. She was on the show at one point. I know she did some work in Montana. But I think it's interesting that there's been a lot of cases that are really fascinating. Of course, everyone thinks of Malmstrom and the nukes. Then there's the Mariana case, which is fascinating. And so before we get into all of that, let's first of all, what is your background and what actually sparked your interest in looking into the topics?
You mean the general topics or the topics
of
UFOs?
UFOs.
Oh. Probably since I was about 10, and that probably goes back to the first time I ever saw, I guess what you could call a UFO. And my brother and I sat and watched a star that was doing arcs in the sky and then goes down towards the horizon, very quickly. And I'd seen a couple after that. Another, I think, when I was about 10, and I've seen quite a few of them. So I guess in my mind, I've always tried to, figure out, what it was. So some of them were quite inexplicable. So
how many?
I learned about MUFON.
I always love to hear sighting stories. How many would you say that you've heard? You've actually seen altogether? You said about 10, maybe.
Probably 4 or 5. The second one that was when I was about 10 years old was we were traveling one night. I think my mom and they used to work in a different town. So traveling that night over the power plant that used to be in the town, although it's shut down now, it was looked like a vehicle, or just some sort of a craft up above the power plant. And I sat there and watched it. And I can see windows in this thing. And it wasn't an airplane because it was oval shaped. So it happened to be going in the same direction as us, so I don't know about that. So
Wow.
I was fascinated by that. And then when I heard about, back in the early 60s when Betty and Barney Hill, and they talked about their story and they just were going to make a movie out of it. Oh, man, I got to see this. I'm not quite sure when that came out, but I've got to see what these things look like. So
The ones with the windows, I've heard so many stories of people talking about the ones with the windows, and I think that's absolutely fascinating.
yeah.
And, I know someone firsthand that saw a cigar shape it looked like ship portholes. I mean, that is just so bizarre.
Yeah, I agree.
And, some people have actually said they've seen like shadows or, silhouettes of some type of figures, of course, going back to Betty and Barney Hill, that story.
Yeah.
But as you got older and you started doing your work and going to school and all that, did you always have a fascination?
Oh, yes. Yes, absolutely. I used to read everything that I could, on the subject. Whitley Schreiber's and Communion and the books that came out. And Ray Fowler, I think I heard him mention
Whoops.
before. I was fascinated. The Andreasen Affair, anything by Alan Hynek, just always searching for answers to the questions.
Well, I'm a latecomer myself, and I actually, I had a sighting, but it was all the way back in 2006. So, but I had like some sort of small interest because we had a flap in a town where I grew up in southern Maine. When I was very young, there was a lot of people seeing something, and a lot of people were talking about it. But one thing I don't remember, is I don't remember the ridicule factor back then. You hear a lot about that, but I just where I was growing up, there was no ridicule factor. I mean, which obviously changed, and it changed after I actually had it firsthand when I started talking about my sighting at my workplace. The word got around, and they were teasing me. That's just the way it goes. But so let's talk about some of the cases that you've looked into, and also the article you wrote for the Open Minds TV was also talked about Afghanistan sighting. So I want to talk a little bit about that at some point tonight. But let's first of all, can you tell the listener what you know about the so-called Mariana case?
Well, I think that I first became interested in it was probably a movie, one of the older movies that I had seen on YouTube, and then I started looking into it, and I have watched the film, and I watched it again earlier today, also just to kind of familiarize myself with it. So, and I think one of the most significant things is that if you take the film, itself, without the fact that, he was the secretary said that he was a promoter. So, Craig from the Condon decided to discount, anything, that it wasn't anything to it because of the fact that he was a promoter. But I mean, if you look at the film itself, it had a lot to it going on. So.
Yeah, and that film, for the person, I don't know if the show producer can put that clip up or not right now, but that film is really basically two objects. Now, as far as I remember in reading about this, he saw these objects for quite a while and then went to get the video camera out of his car, right?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, he was. He was at the baseball field. He was the I guess he was a general manager, of the Great Falls Minor Baseball League. So he was out on the field that day with his secretary. So it was lucky that he had a camera with him. So, and he said that he saw objects moving about 50 feet in diameter. They appeared to be circular, and they rotated while moving, and thought they were going about 400 miles an hour. So that was when he ran back and got his movie camera, and said he got 16 minutes of film, although he claims that some of the film was not given back to him after that. And Malmstrom even figures in that one because he was interviewed at Malmstrom about the incident, which I didn't know until I was looking into it a little bit more.
Wow. No, I didn't know that either. Now there's a video somewhere online of him being interviewed, I believe. I'm not sure. Is that an actor or is that actually him? It's a black and white
That's
video.
actually him. Yeah, I did watch that, most of it earlier today, and I didn't get to the part, because it's part of a movie, and I didn't get to the part where they actually interviewed him, but I think I've seen it before also. But, he discusses the whole film.
Now, this
so
was
some of the things...
Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying
well,
this was a landmark film in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah, it was. Well, it's been said to be the first UFO ever caught on film. So that was 64 years ago.
And it's a double UFO.
Yeah, right. UFOs.
Yeah, and the thing that is kind of remarkable about it is they stay on a steady stream right across the, it's just we're familiar with the tower, the water tower, and the clip of just the vehicles going by, but people have enhanced those images of the craft, and they are pretty much like a rounded disc, almost an egg shape, if I remember right. And so this was the first unidentified object or something like that. Is that considered by the Air Force?
Well, they said it was. I guess I read that it was one of the first ones ever filmed. So. That was 64 years ago. So I don't know. There was obviously not the first one that was ever investigated. So
I wonder, does anyone know what happened to the original footage?
It's at I don't know about the original, where that is.
Okay.
And that could be the original. It says that it resides in the U.S. National Archives. So I don't know if that's a copy of, that's the actual film itself. So, and that's where I had actually, I think, went to that website to see that. So.
And so whatever happened to Mariana himself? I mean, do you know if did he talk about this freely? Do you know?
Yes, he did. I guess for quite a while he used to take the films and was showing it to different groups. Now, I don't know if that was something that he, was getting money for, or just because it interested him. But
yeah, okay. And so, as far as the public understood this, was this big news at the time? Do you know?
I don't really know for certain, but I would have to think that it would probably have generated quite a bit of interest in the people that he showed the film to. I think that they were actually interested in, it was part of the Condon study. And it was also part of the book from Ruppelt. So I was looking at my notes here. So I can't remember the name of the report on unidentified flying objects. I mean, he talked about it in that too, and he didn't really know what it was, and he was kind of listed it as an unknown.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't make any claims himself.
Right.
Yeah. And have you yourself actually read the Ruppelt book? I haven't read that, but everyone tells me it's like the best book.
Yes, several times. I've read it, several times. So.
And do you agree with that assessment?
That it was significant? Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I would agree with that, but
do you
agree what it was, but I don't really know either.
And do you know what Air Force was it? Grunge, or do you know what was 1950 I know it wasn't Project Blue Book yet.
Well, it started out as Project Sign, then it was Project Grunge before it was Blue
Yeah.
Book.
What
Yeah,
did I say? I
yeah.
don't know what I said.
Grunge. Or
Yeah.
was it Grudge? Yeah, it's Grudge, excuse me. Yes.
Uh,
It was because it was basically kind of it was a whole debunking, project instead of, So some of the things that I found, or the Mariana Film Study, and this was some of the older investigation. They said it was shot around 11:30 a.m. That was Mountain Standard Time. Then the wind was 25 to 35 or 28 miles an hour, and then it reached 37 miles an hour at around 12:30 p.m. So, and the objects moved almost directly against the wind direction, so they were not balloons. So in the studies of the film, frame by frame under magnification, showed the motion of the objects to be steady and horizontal, so they were not free falling. So they ruled out that they were not birds or meteors or any known conventional aircraft or other known natural phenomena. And with the shape, the brightness, the speed, the flight path, the steady motion, and the distance between the two objects, ruled out atmospheric anomalies, such as a mirage or a cloud reflection. So the question of the airplane reflection was also ruled out. So that's some of the earlier, investigation that they did on the film. So, and it's still considered one of the best films that shows the existence of unidentified flying objects, 64 years down the road.
Right. And I had no idea that he filmed this for... I'm just spending a little extra time on this because I think it's an important case.
Mm-hmm.
And I had no idea that he filmed it for so long. So apparently the thing was basically moving back and forth, or do you know what type of motion it was doing?
Well, from the film, it just shows it going in one direction, but whether or not it might have been zigzagging, when he was watching it. I really didn't see that in the... in the narrative that I had.
I did see in some notes that I was reading about it that it actually stopped and hovered. They both stopped in sequence, perfectly in line and just hovered.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's possible.
Pretty amazing.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. So hang on. I was just trying to get... that up on video. The producer's been trying to get that up on video. It's just been basically a closed case, right? Now, what about you said it was a part of a report, the Condon report?
Yeah, well, they investigated, and the two investigators that studied it, Dr. Roy Clark and David Sanders, they didn't even agree. Craig wasn't convinced that it had merit, and that was basically because of what the secretary had told him, saying that he was a promoter. In other words, because he was a promoter, that should, for some reason, throw the case out. And then Saunders said that he was convinced, so that there was something to the whole UFO thing. So, and it was also investigated by Dr. William Hartman, and he was an astronomer. And he also worked for the Condon project, and he felt the reflection didn't represent airplanes, although some, they tried to say that it was the airplanes, but that there were two jets in the air around the same time, but it was after they had seen the UFOs.
Oh. So is this part of a chase? Was it? I mean, the Air Force would definitely know that. I mean,
yeah, it could have been. That's possible. And I thought of that the same thing. It's like, were they after them?
Yeah. I mean, there are so many cases where that does happen, where there's a chase.
Very true. Yes.
I would say, I don't know how many I've heard, but it seems like a huge amount of them. There's a chase, and that's always something that surprised me is that someone retires from the military. Maybe it remains classified. They can never talk about it. But I'm just surprised more people haven't, come forward and say, hey, look, I chased this down. There are just a few. There's some, in different countries, but you don't hear American pilots really claiming that too much.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So
I do have
Go ahead.
Do you have a few things to talk about that, because that was part of the archive that I was working on, and I did take note of a few cases here where they were reporting that a lot of times F-16s were dispatched to go after these things. So,
Can you elaborate a little bit more on that, or is that all?
Well, yeah, for about 2 years, I worked on finding using keywords and checking the CMS database, which is part of the information on MUFON. So from I think 1995 until I got to 2008, I found 157 or 175 cases where either the military chased a UFO, or that they were seen on the bases or near the bases, or a retired military was making a report of something that they had seen, which, because they're trained, observers, and especially if they're in the, around aircraft, they know that it's not something that they're familiar with. So, and I had a couple of them here, a few cases that I wrote down. I don't know if you want case numbers or not, but it's like in 1957 at Fort Riley, Kansas, a witness saw 5 lights in a triangular shape over the base. And then in 1959 in Wisconsin, a hovering craft with a beam of light was reportedly chased by the military. So in 1953 at Castle Rock, Colorado, witnesses saw an oval-shaped object with a red light, and a squadron was dispatched to search for it. So I've got a couple more here, too. I don't know if you want to hear about these, but I find it fascinating myself, because up until this point, you don't really hear that, around here. Oh, yeah, they don't pay any attention to them. I'm like, well, apparently they do. So in 1953, a sergeant and I don't know how to pronounce this, Squaw Island, that's Air Force Base, and a roost, where I have no idea where this is. So it tracked a UFO and the fighters on radar. So in 1962 on Ronson Island, California, there was a report of a UFO salvage attempt while on a radar ship. So in 1968, Boston, Massachusetts, there was a report of a blimp-shaped lighted object with a possible MIB involvement, and the witness had ATS clearance. So, and those are just a few of them. I know that there's quite a few more that had to do with the fact that F-16s were dispatched to chase after them. And they're witnessed, by a lot of people a lot of times. So
Right. Yeah, I have a friend in Canada that I'm in the antiques and fine arts business. And he and I did a big appraisal in Atlanta a number of years ago together. So he found my UFO show.
Awesome.
But because he had an interest in UFOs, which I didn't, know about, of course. But basically, he was at a party, I think 10 years ago or more now, and they were at a party outside on a deck, and they saw this. He said it was a perfect shaped disc, silver disc, just flying, and it had 2, whatever the Canada jets are. He said with their afterburners trying to catch up to it.
Yeah.
And they all looked at it. He said everyone looked at it, everyone watched it, and they went, "Holy cow," and all that stuff. And he says, but nobody talked about it afterwards, which I think is very strange.
Wow. Yeah.
And he said he looked in the paper, and he said he couldn't believe in the paper. He looked for days. He said there was not one single mention of it, and which is kind of typical,
Yeah.
But more questions is all it is.
That's for sure.
In about 25, 30 minutes, we're gonna also take calls if anyone wants to call in, and that number will be up on the screen when we decide to do that. And I decided not to announce the calls because this show plays on the Dark Matter Digital Network on Thursday nights. And when I announce the phone number, there's a lot of people that listen over there. So when I announce the phone number, people start calling me every Thursday.
Oh, no.
And it's on till midnight. I get calls late. So, so a little shout out to the Dark Matter Digital Network for all those listeners over there. Thank you for listening. So let's talk a little bit about some of the other cases that you've looked into.
Okay.
Some that you find really interesting in Montana.
Well, yeah, these are been some pretty interesting cases. do you want to hear about the one that was recent or the one from Afghanistan that was on the? I mean, we can talk about that.
Yeah, why don't we talk about that one, and we
Okay.
can go back to Montana after that.
Okay. Well, yeah, I learned about it because the witness was from Montana. So, this is I got my case notes here. Sorry, I don't want to be flipping through papers here, but
Yeah, just to let the people know they're listening, also listening live.
yeah,
I will be
right.
also taking chat questions from you. So if you'd like to pose chat questions, you can in a little bit. I'll announce that a little later on. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I did a case. Well, actually, I did find this case. I didn't do this case myself, but when I was looking through some of the, just kind of get an idea of what the cases in Montana, and that was when I first took over as the state director out there, and it was listed as a CE2, which is a close encounter, and that was from Afghanistan. So, and this happened in May 10th, 2004. An entire Army Special Forces unit saw an unknown spherical-shaped object through their night vision goggles while on security duty in Kabul, Afghanistan. So, this Montana resident stated that while on detail in Kabul, he and the entire Army, like I said, there were 15 men that witnessed this. So he wasn't really sure of the date, but he felt it was around May 10th. He said the craft was huge. It was so close they could have thrown a rock at it and hit it. And it seemed to come out of nowhere, and it floated over one of the mountains from the south, which was east of the base that they had built. It made no noise, and he said the bizarre thing was that he couldn't see it with his naked eye, but they could see it through his night vision goggles, which I kind of wondered, did he have the goggles or did they all have the goggles? So that's not something I really know too much about. So that was a question that I had about the case. So he described the object as having the appearance of a light bulb, but it was a sphere and it was about the size of the moon in comparison. He said it had a translucent appearance but was glowing, and it lit up the surrounding area. And when they saw it, they all stopped looking at it in amazement and awe. So as they watched it, and it hovered around 500 to 100 feet in the air and moved slowly from 5 to 10 miles per hour. So
Wow,
it was about
slow,
100 yards. Yeah, real slow. It was about 100 yards from the outside perimeter of the base camp. So they stood there and watched that.
And
there,
how many witnesses about were involved?
15 plus him. It looks like. So it was there was whoever was out on the detail. It was a security detail. So he got on the radio and talked to his commander, and he just told him, get back to work. It was nothing. So I know later on in reading the story was that the commander saw it also from the camp or the base.
Wow. And was there how did you get this information yourself?
Oh, this is on the CMS, the database. So it's case 55741, and it's listed as a historical case.
Yeah.
As former military. So.
And do you know if the military ever did any investigating, or was this just? I mean, they have their hands full at wartime, so they're probably not even.
Yeah, I don't think so. He was told not to talk about it. And basically, it was just it was just ignored. So.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah.
The ones that always fascinate me are the. I know we're having some buffering problems, and I apologize to the live listener, and I don't know where that's coming from or why. It could be the snowstorm here, and hopefully we won't lose you.
Yeah. Hope not.
Yeah. So as far as other cases involving nukes, the Malmstrom one, how much investigating did you do into that? I mean, there's been a lot of work done on that.
You mean the one from 1974?
The one where Robert Salas was involved? Was that early?
Oh, yeah, in 1967. Yeah, right. I did look into that one, too. And I thought it was pretty interesting. I did take a couple of notes because I think that when people say, well, there was nothing found out about, the reason that they went down, I would have to think that, well, there was specific reasons as to why they couldn't have just went down for, a malfunction. So, I mean...
Well, just a little bit about that from what I understand. Well, first of all, do you happen to know how many nukes actually went down at that night?
I think the first time, I think it was 2. And then the second time, and it was just like a few weeks later with Salas, and it was 10.
Yeah, I knew there was a lot of them. And
yeah.
Just to be clear about that for anyone that doesn't know about this situation, there was a red, I think it was a red UFO, basically, that hovered over the missile, or one of the missiles, and someone was outside and spotted it. They called down to Robert Salas, and he was down, I don't know, like 75 feet down at the base there. And so this person was panicking, and all of a sudden, all these nukes actually went out. And skeptics will say, oh, it had to do with the electrical, or it had to do with air conditioning. Mm-hmm. I think I've heard that before. But really, they are all independent of one another. There's no connections, and there was never any logical explanation how this happened, unless I'm missing something. Is that right?
Right. Yes, I agree with you. Well, yeah, the one happened on March 16th, 1967, and they said they were camping out in the 2 missile silos because they were doing maintenance, and they were also, of course, had the security there. And so they see the UFOs over the missile sites, and at the same time, that was when they all went down, and they went into a no-go situation. So they went off alert. And then it was just 2 weeks after that was when Robert Salas said that he was told by two of the men that that the UFO was right at the front. What you were just saying. It was the red glowing UFO was right outside the gate, and they're like asking him, "Well, what should we do?" Well, and I think that one time, and I don't know if this was the time or the time before, they said, "Well, shoot at it," and I don't think they did, but. I don't think I would either.
I think that would be about the last thing I would ever think of doing.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. And I was listening to the Colonel Salas's report on that, and it was on the video, and he said that he was talking to the other, I think it was the other colonel, and they said 2 of the guards that were out there that saw these UFOs never went back on guard duty after that. They couldn't. They were so scared. I'm like, wow.
That's the thing I remember about. I remember Robert, when he was on the show, he's been on a couple times, but I do remember him saying that they're petrified of the situation. And I understand that, especially when something happens. And it's happened multiple times. I don't know if I actually knew that it happened multiple times there. And you also said 1974 and in the 70s as well?
Well, that's 72, and I'm thinking, the case that I was going, to talk about what happened in 1972, and that was the case that I just had just finished up about a month ago. And what I didn't realize when I did the case was he had actually reported it also in 2011. And it didn't really have to do with missiles that I know of, but he was he was a part of the security police and was stationed at Malmstrom. And so he had said that he had seen a very large UFO, and that was just very close to the base. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it had anything to do with the base itself, but he was, stationed there. So I thought it was... it was kind of a significant case.
Yeah, and what was the follow-up from that? Do you know?
I listed it as an unknown, I thought he was, he spoke very well. He was credible when I talked to him on the phone. Other than that, it wasn't really a lot of, there wasn't any physical evidence, no photographs or videos or anything like that. And I know when I talked to him, and he stated that it had pipe-like projections sticking out of it. It was stationary except for turning, as if it was revolving. So I was like, well, that kind of rules out a regular airplane. They have wings and, it's got a tail, but it doesn't have projections sticking out of it. So, I didn't think that, it was anything like a bolide or meteors or fireballs or, weather anomalies. So, and he didn't remember the name of the other witnesses. So I really couldn't do, a lot, about that. And like I said, this was also investigated in 2011. And they said the same thing, and it was an unknown. So, and this was very near the military installation. So at Malmstrom. And I'm thinking that he might even been, on a security detail for the missile silos, but I didn't ask him at the time. So.
Now, I've had Robert Hastings on, in the past, and I've asked him, what do you think is going on here? That's just basically, I'm just curious to know what he thought, because he's done so much research into it. And he said he basically thinks they're trying to give us a message. Stop playing with these things.
Yeah.
And it's too bad, they were ever invented, if you ask me, but you can't unring the bell once it's invented.
Right.
Any other cases that you're aware of that involves nukes that you've worked on?
Well, the last one, and it's an open case, that's case 89785, and that's still being investigated. I haven't had any word from Malmstrom. I did make a call, to get some information on that. It was reported the day it happened, which was January 24th of this year, and it was said that a black circular wasn't a witness. He was a source. The witness didn't come forward on this one. It was estimated to be over a half acre in size, about half the size of a football field, sighted over a missile launch site, causing the power to go out for 10 minutes. The person reporting, like I said, was not the witness, but he is former law enforcement. He's not given to exaggeration, and he felt that the person that shared this information with him was also pretty reliable. But because the witness is stationed at Malmstrom right now, he's declined to come forward, and because he doesn't want it to hurt his career.
Yeah, you wonder if that will change someday, or if it will. And recently, as I was talking about with Alejandro, since the Pentagon story has been released back in December, maybe things have changed. Maybe more people will feel a little more at ease about talking about it if they can. I realize that, having the security clearance and, a lot of times they just can't talk about things.
Mm-hmm. Well, if nothing else, at least people will realize that there is something there, and there's something real and tangible that needs to be investigated. For all of our sakes. So.
Right.
I thought it was interesting that he said that this person told him that they, meaning the UFOs, they show up, they hang out over the launch sites, and the power goes out. It says they only do unmanned sites since about 20 years ago, as they hit a manned site and they got shot at, which I thought, oh, that's interesting. So they really did shoot at one of these things.
Huh.
So, and they always move them in the daytime, since at night is when they are harassed by them. So, so maybe that's it. Maybe they're just, they're just harassing them. So maybe you'll dismantle all of them and put them all away.
Yeah, strange, huh? Strange.
Yeah.
So, just before we move on, what? I'm curious, because if you don't live in Montana, why are you doing, MUFON work in Montana?
That's part of the case assistant group, and
Oh,
it's kind of
okay.
like they rebuild chapters, or they do cases that go over the time limit, which is, 3 months. And I had worked on I used to be a field investigator from Michigan, and then I went to the case management, and then I started doing cases that went over, like I've done some in Idaho and Kansas, and then they asked me if I wanted to try to rebuild the chapter out in Montana. I mean, right now I'm it. There's no field investigators doing any cases, and I'm trying to build that up and get some people involved, with MUFON out there. So it would be great to be able to have meetings out there, for people that are interested, because it's obviously there are still things going on out there. So, and it is a little more difficult because I don't live in the state, and I don't really get as good a feel for, what the area is, other than Google Earth,
Uh,
see what things are about.
what about interviewing people? Do you get a chance to do a lot of that?
Oh yeah, yeah, I do. Yeah, I will give them a call and see what's up with them, and what happened. So I can get a pretty good read on people and listening to them. So pretty good instinct for that sort of thing. So
The UFO in California, Robert Jacobs, I guess it was. Did you ever look into that? Someone wanted to know in the chat if you've ever looked into that case. When the beam of light came out of the object.
no, I'm not familiar with that one.
Yeah,
So yeah, I haven't worked on any cases out of California.
yeah.
So
I figured so, but I thought I'd ask because it's there was a dummy. It was a dummy nuke on that one in particular that went up over
wow.
Big Sur, I think it was.
Oh, is that the one they had the video of?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And the video mysteriously disappeared, and they said, "You never saw this," which is always,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
If you can't find the film, it didn't exist.
That's right. Yep. So I am going to take calls if anyone would like to call in, and that number will come up on the screen on YouTube. So and I do apologize. I do see there is some buffering going on this evening, and I do apologize for that. I can't do anything about the internet when that happens. So anyway, so the number will be up on the screen, and actually that number has to go up because, hang on just a second. It's right in front of the subscriber button, so it's not going to work where it is. Okay, so that number has to be moved. Sorry about that. There's a number there, so if anyone wants to call in, I can take that call and ask our guest today a question if you'd like to. Also, in the chat room, if you'd like to pose questions for our guest, feel free to do that. Now, can you tell us what you found as the most fascinating case that you worked on? What do you consider the fascinating?
Of Montana?
Yeah.
I would say the one that that I did just recently, maybe just because, I've maybe did about 15 cases out in Montana, so I don't know what percentage wise of, if there were a couple of hoaxes and there were a couple that, are natural or man-made, objects. So I think that the case that I talked about here, where he saw the craft over the base was probably one of the most significant ones that I've done so far.
Yeah. That's a real interesting. How about some other ones? Have you actually looked into some historic cases as well? Going way back?
Probably just the ones, the ones that I mentioned here a few minutes ago, that, and those were just basically the military ones, from the database. And other than, having a little bit of information on that. So I haven't done I haven't done that much work on the historical cases, out of Montana. So
Yeah.
I think maybe I just was more interested in ones that had to do with the military. So
Yeah.
maybe that's why.
Yeah. I have a couple of choices here with what is going on with the internet. But it's going to be a problem. I can reset the router. It's going to take a few minutes. The YouTube video will go down. It may restart again, or it may be the end of the show. But it's going right to red, to nothing. We tested everything prior to the show. It was all working fine. So, I really apologize, but I think it's probably the smart thing to do to wrap this thing up in just a few minutes. So, and I do apologize to the listener. Sorry that this has happened. Let's see. We do have a question. I'll try to get to that. Which story is the most hoaxy one? Have you come across hoaxes?
Yeah, I have a couple.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and talk about
Just
it?
recently. The one, I think I have about 5 open cases right now, and I think it was the one where he sent photographs, and he claimed showed a photograph of a very large UFO over the mountain, and he was standing like in a mountain area, but the photograph taken, he claimed, like a minute before, was taken from a car down at the bottom of the mountain. So, and then the third photo was also taken from, farther away. I think, well, you can't get to the top of a mountain in, like 1 minute. So, and, I checked the information on the photograph. I put it on photo forensics, and I looked at the timestamp of that photo. He told me that the photos were taken 1 minute before and 1 minute after, but he didn't prove it by sending me the actual photographs so I could timestamp them, because all the information on a photograph, is shown. All of the metadata is going to come up. So when he didn't send that to me, I think, yeah, I'm quite sure that's not real.
Wow. Anything else?
Well, the one case that I did from Michigan, and it wasn't Montana, was a photograph that someone had sent of just a huge, just humongous UFO, in the background, like over a house. And it was just fascinating, like I'm looking at it, like, I know this is fake, but I have to prove it's a fake. So when the person narrated, in his narrative, he said that, well, my friend said that that's your light fixture, with a fan on it. I said, yep, I'm quite sure he's right. So what I did was I took photographs. I have a porch that has like a chandelier on it. So I took a picture of the reflection of the chandelier, on the the trees outside. I think, and this is what he did. He took a picture from the inside. And it's just a reflection of that chandelier with lights going around it. So, but even that's what it's about. And you look at it and like, well, I'm quite sure that that's not real, it's been faked, but you have to prove it, because sometimes even just looking at a composite photograph just isn't gonna give you enough information.
There's a very famous UFO picture where it shows two UFO lights. They're pretty much shaped like discs, but what they actually were is in a train car, there were the lights hanging that were reflecting on the lights as these people were looking out the window and taking the picture.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's a real famous picture. And so I just saw, this is kind of funny, but I was watching on a recent news story where they were talking about, the Pentagon UFO and all that. Well, UFOs are real, and they flash that picture up. And it's like, oh no.
Yeah. So. I did see that one. I know which one you were talking about. And after I did my little experiment with the lights in the window, I thought, well, see, this is how you do it. You say you're outside, and you're not outside. You're just taking a photograph of a reflection in a very clean window, because you're not gonna be able to tell the difference.
Okay, we do have someone calling in. We're going to give it a try.
Okay.
Okay. So, caller, welcome to the show. What's your first name and where are you calling from?
This is Ryan from South Carolina.
Oh, Ryan. Ryan,
Hey.
how are you? Ryan's called in a few times. Thanks for calling, Ryan. You have a question now, and hopefully our internet will hang in here. You have a question for our guest?
I do. I wanted to ask her. Actually, someone just asked this sort of asked this in the chat room. I wanted to ask, has she ever plotted the location of a lot of these sightings relative to the missile silos? My info may be dated at this point, post-Cold War, but I know there were some missile silos in Montana and the Dakotas, and I'm just wondering if she ever plotted the sightings relative to those silos, to determine frequency and that sort of thing.
No, I haven't actually done that, but that's very good that you bring that up, and it would be something to definitely look into. And another thing is to maybe time the season-wise, of the sightings. I noticed that several of them were in March, and I don't know if there's something significant about the timeline, of them. If there's more sightings in one time of the year or another, or if it has to do with maybe things going on, politically. So, but that is a very good question. I may have to do that. Thank you.
Ryan, you've called in a number of times. Just a little bit about yourself. Are you someone that got interested in the topic because of you having a sighting yourself, or how'd you get interested in it?
Well, I guess that's kind of a long story. I'm somebody, I'm in my mid-40s, and I'm someone who grew up watching shows like In Search of, Unsolved Mysteries, stuff like that. And I guess I became interested in the topic that way, and read some of Stanton Friedman's books and so on and so forth, and a lot of UFO stuff, and just gradually got interested in it. I had a sighting of my own. I have to admit, though, and as you know, and you didn't warn her about this, that over the years I have gone a bit to the dark side, so to speak, in terms of I've become a bit of a skeptic on some UFO incidents. I've become a major skeptic on Roswell as time has gone by, but there have been other incidents that I have no explanation for. So I'm neither here nor there, but that's kind of the short version of it.
Well, that's interesting, and you brought up Roswell, so we're just taking a little bit of a jag here, if that's okay with you, Marie.
Mm-hmm. That's fine.
Yeah, on the Roswell, I've had a number of people on that have brought up questions about Roswell, but the one thing that I always have to say about that is, why would they say they captured a disc? First of all, why did they could have said nothing at all? That's the only thing. That's the argument I have. Is why didn't they just say nothing at all instead of actually announcing that they found a disc? That's always been my question. And what's your thoughts on that, Ryan?
I think, I in my time have worked for some very large organizations, not to name names, very large corporations. And, even though I've never served in the military, I can tell you that in any large company, sometimes the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing, and mistakes get made. I'm sure no one wanted the Pentagon Papers leaked, but they got leaked anyway. So nothing runs perfectly, and I'm not sure the guy who ordered Halt to put that out. I'm not sure what he was thinking. He definitely got the choke chain yanked pretty hard on him immediately. Certainly for doing that.
Right. Yeah, you saw that happen. Ryan, so thanks so much for calling in. Do you have any other questions?
No, sir, I sure don't.
All right. Well, thanks for calling in.
All right. Hope you get out of the snow.
Yeah, I can't wait for that. So someone asked in the chat room a question, and they just wanted to know, what was the scariest case that you looked into?
Scariest. I don't know that I've had any scary cases. I guess maybe if you're talking about, somebody being over missile silos, I guess that should scare us if it doesn't, because they are nuclear missiles. So,
Yeah.
And if someone or something is shutting them down when, we were to need them, like in the case where they were shut down in 1967, they were completely inoperable for a whole day. If we're using these for our defense, then that does put us at risk. But
I thought it was a lot longer than that. Am I thinking about when Robert Salas was involved?
And yeah, it might be. I think it was the earlier one. They said that it took them a day to get them back online.
Yeah. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but I believe it was Russia or some other country where where nukes were actually activated and they were on countdown. Did you ever hear about that?
Yes, I did. I'm thinking that the movie with Dan Aykroyd was actually about that, and I didn't realize it till afterwards. Of course, it turned it into a farce, but I didn't realize that it was based on a real incident where they were, we almost had a war because of, this going offline or being almost launched. So, yeah, that would have been scary.
To me, I think that's about, that if someone's going to mess with you, that's the ultimate, the ultimate messing with is just your whole world's going to be destroyed.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah, yep. So we are taking call-ins. If anyone wants to call in, that number is up on the line. And I'm seeing the internet bouncing all over the place, but it seems like it's still hanging in. People are saying they're still able to hear us. So I apologize to anyone if they're not. I am seeing some buffering, but we can work with that. So what, besides Montana, have you looked into other cases, like in Michigan, for instance?
Yeah, I did cases in Michigan for about 6 years, so up until about a year and a half ago.
And do you have any cases you can talk about there?
Let me see. I really haven't had anything, like a lot of CEs, any close encounter type cases that are, outstanding. Pretty much they were, I can't say really cut and dried, but because I've done some that were, unknown. We actually have a military base too. Speaking back to the military, it's Selfridge base is down there by Detroit. I think one of the cases that I thought was pretty interesting was that I think that was a historical case, and I think that I had been reading about it, where the base itself was shut down at the time that there was because I guess there's it's on a lake or very close to the lake there, and the witness and about 6 or 7 other people, including a retired colonel that was from the base, were in a boat, and just there was multiple witnesses to the huge craft being over the lake, and they put the whole base on shutdown, nobody in or out. So, and I thought that was a pretty interesting case.
Yeah, that is.
So, it happens.
Yeah, yep. And you're actually near the Great Lakes or one of the Great Lakes? I know you said you have lake effect snow.
No, I'm very close to the lake. As the crow flies, about 500 feet.
Oh my goodness! So
Yeah.
there's a lot of talk about UFOs over the Great Lakes.
Yes.
And
yes.
Have you ever looked into any of those?
Not the ones I've actually looked at a little bit. I live in Muskegon. I don't know if I should tell anybody where I live, but I live in Muskegon, Michigan, which is very close to the lake. And we, back in the early, I'm thinking it's the early 90s, 96, there was a large amount of activity, UFO activity within the area, and a lot of them were over the lake. A lot of them were seen over the lake. One of the times that I did see a UFO, I think, was in 96, 97. And the strange thing about it is sometimes when you do see something that doesn't fit into your worldview, you have a tendency to make it normal. You don't really want it to be something that you don't recognize. Because I remember watching one with my sister one night, and we see these lights was probably about 9 o'clock at night, and we see this lighted object at night, and it was silent, completely silent, moving really slowly. And we're looking at it and like thinking, yeah, that's a plane. You knowing full well that's not a plane. You just want it to be a plane.
Yeah,
I mean,
one thing, your mind is always trying to adjust to what something is. Your
yes.
mind's always trying to make an answer. And I think that's, when I had my sighting, I just remember like, what what is that?
Yeah.
And that it was just
very
outside
true.
of what I was supposed to see. And I've mentioned this a number of times on the show, but the thing that freaked me out the most about it is that it was moving and there was absolutely no sound.
Mm-hmm.
And I had never heard anyone ever talk about that before. And now I hear it all the time, of course.
Yeah, it's very true. And when you hear other people talking about it and, living the same experience, it does become, more significant. But I think when you talking about significant cases, it probably has to be, with myself, and it tends to be more personal, is because it is something, a case that I did experience. I've had my own sightings. And I think the one that I had in the early 90s, where it was during the daytime, then seeing a very large craft. It had to have been, 1.5 times the size of the moon, moving through the clouds. It was just 3 lights, amber and green and red. And you could tell that it was revolving because it come out of the cloud and then it went back in. And I see this and it's like, what is that? And I just, not paralyzed with fear, but I was afraid. So, and I went down, I got my daughter, was outside playing, and I come in the house. Why? I don't know why, just come in the house. But then, you try to rationalize it, and what it was that you saw. So at the time, we used to have these laser light shows where they would beam these, a show off from these buildings, downtown during this festival. So I thought, well, maybe it was the laser show, and I thought, well, no, when you beam lasers off, into the clouds, they kind of tend to disappear, because lasers will keep on going, to infinity if there's no cloud cover. So it couldn't have been the lasers.
Yeah. That sounds like a really good one, actually. So I think, we're getting buffering and, internet just keeps going in and out.
Okay.
But let's, I just want to answer one more question here. The company, I don't know if you can talk about this either, but the company Cygnus Research, they wanted to know what kind of artifacts do they actually work on? I mean, that little side jag, can you talk about that or not?
Oh, well, Cygnus Research is my own company. So yeah, I can, I can talk about it. It's kind of like I do it basically just privately, and it's my own research, but because some of the things that, besides UFOs, that I have researched for years and years and years, tend to be some of the, artifacts that maybe, are part of our culture and part of our, society that we all are interested in, Ark of the Covenant, things like that. So that was one of the things that I was interested in doing research. Of course, mine isn't going out, in archaeological sites, which I wish I could, but it's mostly just, doing the secondary research to see what is actually out there. And my own, theory is that a lot of the artifacts, such as the Ark of the Covenant or the Holy Grail, are all one object, and there possibly was maybe some sort of a weapon, or something. And the main thing is that I think they really existed. I think some of those artifacts really did exist. They might not have existed as what we, have come down to us in stories, but that's one of the things that I like to look into, and I have done, I have some interest in other things like, researching alchemy. I did a little research into what alchemy was and whether they really could make gold, which is kind of a silly thing, maybe, I guess, because it's a thought, well, that's just, just more spiritual. That was what they thought of as a spiritual thing. But
Well, I think they just have to
they
add like a couple of electrons or something to lead,
possibly
something
yeah.
like that.
Well, I think what they were trying to do is just when you take down anything, if you can take it down to the base level, and then you can remake it into what you want. So in other words, what we can do now with the Hadron Collider, and we can smash atoms into pieces. And I actually found out that the byproduct of the smashing atoms that they do in the Hadron Collider actually makes radioactive gold. So,
Wow.
so they really can make gold, but you don't really want to touch it.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. For 200,000 years. All right.
Yeah.
So thanks so much. I do appreciate it. And I'm so sorry that, we're going to have to, it's just the storm we're having here. And we're just going to have to, shut it down. But thanks so much.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, everyone. Okay.
Bye.
Take care now. Thank you. All right, everyone. So that is it for our show, and I do apologize. Just unforeseen, and I know it's the heavy snowstorm we have here, and I can't wait to get out of the snow. And hopefully, I'll shovel my entire. I have this really long driveway, and I will shovel it if I have to get out of here for Saturday to make it over to Phoenix, which I can't wait to go to. So we will be there. And the show will be early. So hang on just 1 minute. I have to get my producer back on the line here to help me close out. And just hang on. So anyway, we will be back from next week at not our regular time, at 6 to 8, and that's Eastern Standard Time. So look for us there. The YouTube video is already up. And so thanks very much, everyone. Again, we'll be back next week. And remember to keep your... Oh, wait a minute. Before I go, I want to thank a few people. First of all, Alejandro Rojas for the UFO updates. And hang on just 1 second. We have Peggy Shunning, who helps with our Facebook page. And remember to like us on our Facebook page. We have over 20,000 people there that interact. So check that out. And I also want to thank Evan for producing the show. He tried to do a really good job tonight. It's been tough. It's been a challenge with the internet again and again. I'm so sorry. And thank you for your help if you're supporting the show. I really appreciate that, and I could not do that without you, and I could not do this show without the listeners, and I always appreciate them. And remember, you can listen to the whole show live every Thursday night at 10 to midnight on the Dark Matter Digital Network, also on YouTube. And if you want to put it in your media player, you can go to iTunes or any other media source. It'll be there. That's for the free show. For the subscription, you can get the full shows and all the archives as well for $2 or more a month. Thanks so much, everyone. And remember to keep your eyes to the sky.